I'm Karen Cuttill, and I'm with Dallas College. And today we'll be talking about connecting your well-being across the SDGs, building resilience and well-being. I'm one of the professional counselors. I'm a licensed mental health counselor in the state of Texas, and I've been with the college since about 2006. I am very interested in sustainability. I was raised well by my mother back in the day, and so sustainability, ecology, all of those things, leaving a place better than where I found it, all of those things are ingrained in me. So I'm very excited that the world is beginning to realize how important sustainability is. And when I discovered that sustainability was part of our mission here at our college, I was almost doing some, somersaults and cartwheels. So I'm beginning to partner a little bit with the sustainability group here, and really glad to be able to talk to you a little bit today about the Sustainable Development Goal number 3 and how it kind of works with all of the other. Those SDGs they're all combined, they're intertwined, kind of like the picture you see there on the screen. They're all intertwined because one impacts the other, and it's just that way. And SDG number 3 is like the main core that goes through all of them when you're looking at the sustainability for the self and how we can keep ourselves in a really good place. So here we go, and I'll try not to go too fast. Hopefully by the end of today, you'll be able to identify 3 sustainable development goals that impact well-being. You'll be able to identify 3 actions that will improve overall health and well-being. And you'll be able to identify 3 personal steps to increase resilience and well-being through the SDGs. So in response or in connection to one of the SDGs, you'll be able to identify maybe one step there and another one. So over all of them, you'll have the ability to figure out about at least three things that you can do to increase your resilience and well-being. So number 3 is good health and well-being. And I like this because I didn't know that it was even one of them until I was told by the college, like, hey, you're working in this SDG number 3. And then I learned a lot more after that point. And I'm glad to let you know about everything that or some of the stuff I've learned, maybe not everything. So the United Nations Sustainability Goal, Development Goal number 3 is, for the 3 itself, is by 2030, reduce by 1/3 premature mortality from non-communicable diseases through prevention and treatment and promote mental health and well-being. So when I started this, 2-3 years ago, it was, basically we talked about cardiovascular issues, and we talked about diabetes, and we talked about a couple of other things that were really important, and we were trying to, these were health concerns across global health concerns. Within the last 2 years, of course, we've had a pandemic that has totally impacted the world. So some of these things that we were on shifted a little bit to get vaccinations, to get treatments, masks, to help the world survive, because for the first time in about 100 years, we were looking at something that was very global, and it kind of brought us together. And I like to think about how things that are really negative and have negative impacts, throughout those things are also, there's a thread of hope. And when we look at I believe when we look at COVID, and we can see all the negative, but if we just switch our perception, we'll also see that for one time in all of our lives, I think maybe for the first time in most of us, we saw the globe, our entire world, react and come together. It makes me a little bit emotional, but I think that will set the stage to help us with climate change and other sustainability issues that we do need to address globally. And so I just kind of want to put that out there, because number 3, of course, is we did address COVID and helping people get to where they needed to be so that they could be safe from COVID, and we can get over this eventually someday. So the target really is, it's about the physical health, it's about the mental health and well-being, and then we're going to talk about environmental, because all 3 of these will impact our well-being. I mentioned before on the physical part a little bit how we are doing the non-communicable diseases, but we switched over, and because of the pandemic, we did include COVID as part of our piece there this past couple of years. But when we get to the mental well-being, we're talking about mental health. And mental health is something that is taboo in a lot of countries or in a lot of cultures and has a lot of stigma in it. And we'll talk briefly about stigma in a couple of minutes, but I just wanted to say that we're going to focus in, when we talk about mental well-being, we're going to focus in on depression, anxiety, substance use abuse, and suicide. These are the things that we are trying to lower across the world with our SDG number 3. When we talk about depression and anxiety, there are a lot of causes to that, and we're going to look at some environmental and some cultural things that impact that and tend to raise those numbers overall for us as a globe, because none of those are particular to a culture. We sometimes think that suicide is just for, those people that or one place or another place, but it actually is pervasive. Kind of like domestic violence, it's pervasive from all the cultures, all of the religions, all of everything. It doesn't matter if you're the richest person on earth or if you're the poorest person on earth. You are susceptible to some of these things that we really do want to change in our future. One of the last thoughts when we talk about mental health well-being just by itself, I want to point out some fatal thoughts here, because when we're talking about stress, and stress is something we tend to experience emotionally, we notice it kind of emotionally. We also notice it physically, because when stress impacts us, we're looking at something and our brain's kind of identifying something as not being okay, maybe a threat. And that stress reaction, kind of fight or flight, is a production of cortisol and adrenaline and other stress hormones in our body to prepare for us to fight some sort of threat, either engage it or run from it. And that's a whole nother sustainability webinar. But I do want to briefly talk about that, because when we're under stress, our bodies do produce these hormones. And if we get too much hormones, we get tense necks, tense muscles, we get irritable, we lose sleep, we lose focus. A lot of things happen with stress. If we're talking about chronic stress that is not managed well, then we're talking about a stress that becomes very impactful on us physically, helping us or making us more susceptible to diseases, particularly the non-communicable ones as well as the communicable ones. So a lot of people, their coping mechanisms might be to eat a lot more and to eat sugary and sweet things, because carbohydrates tend to make us feel better, at least in the United States they do. And that, of course, leads into type 2 diabetes, plus a lot of the manufacturing and the production pieces where they're adding corn syrup and sugar and all different kinds of sugar in and disguising them in different ways. These things happen to come in from and impact our health in a global. So we look at a lot of things with SDG. It's not just about feeling good and being good physically. Unmanaged long-term chronic stress actually leads to depression, and it leads to anxiety. Untreated anxiety leads to depression, and depression at many times leads to suicide, the taking of someone's life. I'll just briefly kind of catch here. The suicide occurs throughout the lifespan, as well as it is the 4th leading cause of death among 15 to 29-year-olds globally in 2019. That is probably higher after COVID, because we've seen our anxiety, our depression rates, and unfortunately our suicide rates globally go up with COVID and the impact COVID has had on us. But I do want to point out that in 2019, it was the 4th leading cause of death. 3 years before that, it was the second highest, was the second leading cause of death for that age group. So when we reach out with the Sustainable Development Goals, they work. And this is a great place to show that they work, because we can actually see how in a matter of 3 years, we went from the second highest to the 4th highest. Even if COVID inches us back up, we will reset where we were before. 77% of global suicides occur in low and middle income countries. And the stigma, again, I wanted to talk about this, particularly surrounding mental disorders and suicide, means that many people thinking of taking their own life or who have attempted suicide are not seeking help and therefore not getting the help they need. Suicide, depression, or biological state, when we get to the point that we are thinking really negative and hopeless thoughts, our body responds to that, usually with a drop in serotonin, a drop in dopamine, a drop in other hormones, but it leaves us vulnerable to not being able to combat those negative thoughts. And so many people get to that place and they have very little hope. They can't see the positive. They can't see the hope of hope. And they do choose to take their own lives. And we want to really work on and really helping that get to a lower, so that someday maybe it's not even in the top 5. And that would be really, really great for any age group. It is actually probably for non-communicable diseases, it might even be higher for elderly people, because the rate of suicide often goes up, but it's usually disguised as something else when people are older. The prevention of suicide has not been adequately addressed due to the lack of awareness of suicide as a major public health problem, and the taboo that many societies have when people want to discuss it. People don't want to talk about it because it's something they don't understand. They feel like it's out of control. And so many people erroneously think if they ask someone if they're thinking about suicide, it's going to make them suicidal. Truth is, they're either suicidal or they're not. And asking them actually may be the one way of saving their lives. So just a nugget, if you're talking to someone that seems depressed or really anxious, ask them how they're doing. Say, just you're not thinking of self-harming yourself, are you? And, I would say suicide, I would blatantly say about. So if you are experiencing prolonged stress, then we really want to manage that well, right? Like COVID. Well, that was unknown. No one kind of knew what to expect next. And so COVID is kind of a really good example. And we've been in it now for, over a year. And we're kind of really nearing in close to January when the world kind of went upside down. So we're closing in on that 2-year mark. And so now people are really getting tired. They're getting tired of wearing masks. They're getting tired of listening about it. They're ready to go on with their lives. But unfortunately, we may not actually be at that point yet. So we still have to take precautions. But that kind of stress we wear thin on over a while. So chronic stress, we really need to address and help people deal with it in positive ways. Because oftentimes, like COVID, it's not something we could prevent or just end and change. So many things that we have that power over. COVID, at least at the beginning, was not one. We have choices now we can make that will help. But anyway, the cumulative, I forgot it there, effect of chronic low-grade stresses can have a greater impact on health and well-being than acute or extreme events that occur at infrequent levels. And they're talking about earthquakes, hurricanes. They come in, they have their deal, and they're over with, and then you get to the the rebuilding, and you get to the response after that. But chronic stress isn't that way. It stays and it just gnaws at us. Humans are able to manage moderate and high levels of stress for short periods of time. That's where our adrenaline, our cortisol, we're geared to do it for a short bit of time. But chronic stress with a little opportunity for recovery can lead to unhealthy levels of psychological and physiological reaction, because again, our mental and our physical health are integrated. They're not like one over here. They're not disengaged from each other. They're actually so integrated that in the design of the human body that we really can't pull them apart. And there's more talk about that in the future. So I wanted to talk about how the SDGs are kind of connected, and particularly number 3 to the other SDGs. So number 1, no poverty. Well, most people can think about if you don't have enough money, right, and everything's bad, you can't get work, you become chronic stress. So that chronic stress is going to impact your ability to focus, the ability to concentrate, the ability to make good decisions. It may end up in overwhelming you to the point that you can't do anything. You become really, really depressed. So that chronic stress is now developing mental health issues. And those, when they continue on, they impact people's ability to see positive change, they see the positivity in anything, but they also impact people's inability to work. So if you think like in the United States, where normally most people are employed, right? But if they go through a level of chronic stress for a long period of time, their mental health gets a little bit shaky, and it actually can't keep them from being able to go to work. We think about people that, they start missing work, they start missing school. These are some of the symptoms of depression and anxiety. That going on, eventually, they're not going to have their job anymore, because people are going to say, you got to show up to work, right? And then they lose their employment. And then eventually, if that continues, they are hit that poverty line or below that poverty line, which again produces chronic stress, and that chronic stress impacts our mental health and our ability to function and to do other things like work, to make positive decisions, to have hope. And all of that just circles. So it's just one giant cycle that it's really important that we begin to attack it where we can, when we can. SDG number 2 is no hunger. Now, how can you help reduce hunger? Well, if I was a farmer and was a successful farmer, I might could give extra food and send it to people. I would love to do that. But food insecurity, particularly after COVID, has become one of the main focuses of today. Food insecurity and mental health. Well, people have long time known that little kids, if they don't get breakfast, they don't do well in school. Well, guess what? If we don't have the right amount of food and nutrition, we don't do well in life either. And food insecurity absolutely impacts our mental health. And our mental health may eventually impact our food security. In 2020, this is just last year, an estimated 54 million Americans, including 18 million American children, are now food insecure. The impact of the coronavirus on food insecurity in 2020, I should have checked that one off, is actually probably higher than that. So many people from COVID have lost their jobs. They can't get out. They can't do what they need to do. Food insecurity is everywhere. You're going to see it in your lower incomes. Middle class has been heavily impacted in the United States. But don't be surprised if you learn that it's happening in people that would normally be placed in that higher maybe they live in the better neighborhoods, they drive the better cars, they've had better jobs. They may not have those jobs anymore. So the first time in their life, what's impacting the world is impacting their food security, because they may have all the bills they used to have and all the coping mechanisms they used to have, or they still have, but they don't have what they need to fight today's long-term chronic stress. The risk of depression and suicide, again, is much higher. And food insecurity in itself is associated with a 257% higher risk of anxiety and a 253% higher risk of depression. Losing a job during the pandemic is associated with a 32% increase in risk for anxiety and a 27% increase in risk for depression. And I believe that sits on top of the anxiety that you get just knowing that there's a pandemic out there. So with food, I think what we can do is, I think one of the things that we can do is we can conserve. We can choose the food that we eat. We can choose to avoid non-nutritious foods. Those foods that have lots of high sugar in them. If we start eating healthier to the best of our ability, we will actually impact food availability. If we don't waste food, if we buy locally, we're helping everything. We're helping our local farmers. If we try not to buy the food that is not healthy for us and is shipped in from other places, well, we're impacting the different climates and the different sustainability goals in different ways. The next one I want to talk about is clean water. Oh, back with food, we can compost. And compost helps do something with food that's not wasteful. So I'm trying with my family not to throw food away. I'm trying to figure out what to do with the food that's left over besides eating it, if we can't eat it. I'm also learning how to make smaller portions. And in our United States, we tend to eat larger portions than we need to. So that's just something that we can do. When it comes to clean water and sanitation, water is important. We are mostly made up of water, and so we can very quickly get dehydrated if we don't have water. These two pictures are pictures I took when I was on a mission work in Africa, and I was really impacted there about how children spend, particularly female children, spend a lot of time drawing water because so many of them don't have a well and they're close by where they live, and they have to travel a long way on foot. And they bring big pails like you see the girl having, and they fill up these big containers like the little boy has on his bicycle. And that's how their children pull that water for them. So oftentimes they pulling water, they can't go to school. So think about how much you use water and how wonderful it is to turn a faucet and have it come on for you. But again, water shortage, climate changes, we need to conserve water. We need to watch where our trash goes, because the trash that doesn't go into where it needs to go ends up in our creeks, in our lakes, and in our oceans. And that causes another SDG to come in, right? We don't want to have increased pollution in our oceans. So just think about what flows into your creeks. It may not be your trash, but it might be the chemicals you use on your lawn. It might be your lawn cuttings. Just think a little bit bigger picture when we do things. Small steps can have a huge impact. Water keeps us well. It helps us absorb nutrients from foods. It helps us flush out those things that we don't want, right? It prevents hydration, which can lower serotonin, which lower serotonin equates with higher depression and higher anxiety. And it can cause us to not focus well. So most of us are actually probably on the slightly dehydrated level if we really got to measure that. So we need to drink more water and try to drink the water that's local, if possible. It washes away germs. We're washing our hands a lot more than we ever had, but if we didn't have water, we would have a hard time washing our hands and getting rid of germs, providing for that, and COVID would be worse around us. And water, drinking water does a lot of things, but it also helps lower your blood pressure, which is one of the health conditions. That high blood pressure is one of the things that we are trying to impact with SDG number 3. You may not be able to change the world, but you can do what you can do, and you will increase your own well-being. It's if we hear all of this stuff and we feel helpless and we feel like there's nothing we can do about it, we're going to be increasing our anxiety, and we're going to be lowering our resilience, and we're going to be more impacted by what's happening, okay, in the world today. But if we step back and say, what can I do? Well, I can keep the water from running. I can put meters on my toilets. There's lots of things we can do, and oftentimes your municipality will pay you for those things. So check them out. It's easy. So health and well-being, the things that I came up with my research is no food waste. Now, I know if you got extra food, it's not going to help the starving kids in China or India or places like that. But if we are cognizant of not preparing too much food, then and how much food we're trying to eat or feeding ourselves, that is going to have a domino effect backwards. Volunteer for a food bank. If you're on my campus at Dallas College, we have the North Texas Food Bank. They're coming every week. They come somewhere. They need help. Ask your supervisor. I believe most people will say, sure, go work for an hour or two that day. Make up the time elsewhere, because feeding people, helping people with food insecurity is an amazing thing. Makes you feel kind of good too. Keep our water clean from runoff. Drink more water and less other drinks. And you can go on through these things. And if you have more ideas, I want you just to kind of jot them down somewhere and then think about them later. And the bottom line is conserve, conserve, and conserve. So education opens the doors of hope and change for many. So educate yourself. These are things you can do. Educate yourself. Fight stigma. Stigma and mental health. That's people, there's so many bad thoughts that are erroneous. There's so many myths about mental health and well-being. Educate yourself. Go learn what the myths are, and then try to change them and address them when you see them. One of the best places to learn is become mental health first aid certified. It's a rage and roaring across the nation. We're hoping it will end up being like CPR for mental health and well-being, and we will fight suicide like never before. If you work for this college, it's free. Look at your professional development. If you don't, just go online, find out from the mental health first aid. Just search it. It will point you to the right direction, and probably someone that you can get it to from free. Support gender equality, vote, volunteer, promote equality, peace, and justice. Be the difference, take the lead, and be assertive. Easy steps when we try to start little and just do what's right in front of us to do. We can make an impact. The WHO defines mental health as a state of well-being where individuals realize their potential and can cope with normal challenges in life, can work productively, and contribute to their economy. Economy, we're looking at 8, 9, and 11, right? In poor mental health and poor physical health, like type 2 diabetes, it doesn't go away. It just progresses worse if it's not well managed. These things impact our economic prosperity, our sustainable community, and our jobs. And again, if we don't got good jobs and can't work, it's just going to spiral itself over and over and over. The last piece I want to talk about very quickly is SDGs 7, 12, 13, 14, and 15. They're my favorite because we're talking about protecting the planet and natural resources. And there is so much evidence, so much research that says our environment, and again, it's one of the SDG number 3, our environment plays so heavily impacted on our mental health and physical well-being. Air pollution can negatively impact your mental health. Who knew, right? That those particles that are floating in our airs when we have air pollution, they actually change our physical being, and they can impact our brain in ways that cause us to be more anxious and more depressed. You can read these things about the takeaways about young people, children that experience higher rates of mental health challenges because they were exposed to pollution at young ages. All these things, just kind of look at that and go on. And I'm pressed for time, so I'm going to try to go very quickly because I want to encourage you to take a walk on the wild side. If I had music playing, I would be playing a song from back in the day, like really back in the day, but it would be take a walk on the wild side. But I'm not talking about that kind of walk. I'm talking about the green walk. And you can go to southernforest.org, and anyone can email me after this, and I will give you the links and tell you where to find the information. But think about taking a walk on the wild side in a natural setting. Maybe it's by the beach, maybe it's in a forest, maybe it's in a canyon. It's someplace that you like, right? Outside, outdoors, in nature. When you exercise just by walking, you're going to release stored chemistry from stress that's stored in your muscles. You'll relax your body. You're going to improve your cardiovascular health. You'll reduce blood glucose. That's fighting type 2 diabetes. You're going to reduce frustration and your blood pressure, and you're going to improve the way you think. There's a lot of research out there right now. Some of it is from the University of Washington that did a lot of research about people walking in urban settings against people watching in natural settings. And of course, the natural settings won hands down. Ecosystems and services are now being incorporated into city planning, and that's great. Public use of green spaces has a huge impact. Children with attention deficit disorder, they have found that if they're working outside, they get a lot more focus. It works for adults too. There's a reason why your executives have the corner office with a view outside. I'm telling you, there's a reason. Natural hospital rooms, people in hospitals, even in ICU units, when they can see outside, and it doesn't have to be a forest, when they can just see outside from their hospital rooms, they get well much faster. They recover faster. They don't die nearly as often. This is just being able to see outside their room. Imagine if they could really actually be in nature. Low birth weight is associated again with the lack of green spaces. 50% of us live in urban areas. Yeah, it's going to increase a lot by 2050. And the increasing urbanization is, again, it's linked with poor mental health, poor physical health, and there's lots of studies about that out there. On average, individuals have both lower mental distress and higher well-being when living in urban areas with more green space. A lot of people are, and particularly in lower socioeconomic neighborhoods, they're buying up vacant lots and turning them into green space. The evidence is amazing. Plant a tree, right? We're talking about air pollution. Trees are the biggest filter we've got on this earth, right? Trees do something else that people don't recognize. Trees actually, their roots filter the stuff that comes off of our stuff. The roots filter all of the stuff that gets down in our soil. Trees are amazing. Grow one, protect one, hug one. Dallas Parks and Recreation, any city you live in, any urban city you live in, they have parks and rec. Look them up. They've got trails hidden where you don't know they're trails. Dallas, Texas has 158 miles of public trails. There's a lot of places to get to. If you don't know where there's a park or you don't know where there's nature near you, Discover the Forest will tell you. And there's links here. Write to me. I'll give you all these links if you can't get them today off of here. Healthy Trees, Healthy Lives. You want to know more about trees? Check out Healthy Trees, Healthy Lives. When you go there, it's got little things. It's good to use with your kids or if you're teaching a class, because you can click on different places on the picture, and it's going to tell you how that and what the impact of that is when we're looking at health, and whether it's a tree, whether it's really good. Go find it. Doesn't take long. It does promote healing. And finally, remember, out of all the things that we are talking about today, kindness is the most important superpower. It is. Random acts of kindness work. If you want to build resilience and you want to build your own sense of self-being, turn your eyes off of yourself, turn them out, and just start being nice to people. It's amazing. Don't expect anything in return because we're not always a nice society, but just start being nice. Smile at people. It's amazing. They'll look at you like you came from another planet. Then they'll smile back. And when we smile, guess what? Our mood improves, our anxiety and our stress lowers. When you do random acts of kindness, you're going to reduce your stress. And I'm going to just kind of combine this with volunteering. Volunteering, doing it is amazing, right? And like I said, if you're on this college campus, there's a food truck that comes. If you're not, there's someone out there delivering Meals on Wheels. They're doing something out there, right? Something in one of these SDGs. Look for a place, and maybe it's not one of the SDGs. Just volunteer. When you volunteer, it does all those things I just talked about. And here's a secret: oxytocin. Now, oxytocin is what women, when they're giving birth, they actually produce oxytocin. It actually happens during orgasm and sex too, just letting you know. But those are like the only places that people thought. But then they started testing for oxytocin, and they realized that they knew that when people volunteer, serotonin goes up, dopamine goes up. I mean, good things happen in our body chemically. But what they discovered is if you volunteer with someone you know, like two of you together, your brain actually begins to release oxytocin. That is an amazing feel good. It blocks out the pain of childbirth for women. Think about it, naturally producing oxytocin when you volunteer with another person. See, self-care is important. Self-care is not about self-indulgence. It's about self-preservation. Self-care is like good nutrition, restful sleep, fun, spirituality, community, mindfulness, active lifestyle, and a positive focus. If you're having trouble with some of these, look for a counselor. They're out there, but I don't want to say we're a dime a dozen. We're slightly more expensive than that, unless you're on this campus and you're a student. We're free. And a lot of large organizations like our college have employee assistance programs, and usually those have a free counseling piece in them too. Take care of yourself, because when you take care of yourself, you set the stage for taking care of the world. I'm serious. Do the little things that are here, and you will begin to impact the rest of the world. And again, my name is Karen Cuttill. I'm a licensed professional counselor at Dallas College. I am totally into sustainability, particularly of yourself, because if we can't be sustainable ourselves, then what good do we do long-term anyway, right? So if you have any questions, I'll be glad to answer any questions that you might have.